Early in the 21st century, MLS and the Champions League success were few and far between. Of course, you had some clubs finding this success, like DC United and LA Galaxy in 1998 and 2000, respectively. But outside of those wins and a 1997 Galaxy Finals appearance, MLS did not make it to the final game of the Federation's biggest tournament. That was until the 2010-2011 Real Salt Lake team showed up and said, "Hold my beer." Because you see, up to this point, RSL were experiencing similar starts to many an expansion team in MLS. 3 seasons without the playoffs to start their MLS tenure until they found some success in 2008 and capped it off with the ultimate prize, an MLS Cup victory in 2009, winning a thrilling PK shootout against the LA Galaxy, which I'm pretty sure we covered. Go check it out if you haven't. It was this result that earned them a spot in the 2010-2011 CONCACAF Champions League, joined by fellow MLS sides Columbus Crew, who were the Supporter Shield winners, LA Galaxy, who were the MLS Cup runners-up, Seattle Sounders, who were the US Open Cup winners, and Toronto FC from the Canadian Championship. Liga MX would send their powerhouses as well. Monterrey and Cruz Azul were joined by Toluca and Santos Laguna, and other clubs were sprinkled in as well, most notably Olimpia from Honduras, Saprissa from Costa Rica, and the Puerto Rico Islanders from the infamous USSF D2 Pro League, qualifying as the champions of the CFU Club Championship, making Carmelo Anthony undoubtedly proud if he remembered that his team existed at all at that point. The tournament would start with a preliminary round, which RSL would avoid on account of their MLS Cup victory. However, it would be criminal not to mention that in this playoff round, the legends of USSF D2 Pro League Puerto Rico Islanders actually pulled off a thrilling 5-3 aggregate upset over the LA Galaxy after a 4-1 home win and holding on for a 2-1 loss on the road. In fact, LA Galaxy didn't even score a goal in their own first leg, as their goal was an own goal in Los Angeles. So absolute scenes. Back to the RSL timeline. In 2010-2011 CCL, it was set up such that after the preliminary rounds, the tournament would be broken into 4 groups of 4. Each team plays each other once at home and once away. RSL were joined with Cruz Azul from Liga MX, fellow MLSers Toronto FC, and Arabe Unido out of Panama. And this ended up being the craziest series of matches maybe in existence. In the month of August, they would kick off their group stage against Arabe Unido, where late game heroics were needed, as a 94th minute Alvaro Saborio penalty was required to win the match and start the group stage off with 3 points. They then followed this up with a 9-goal thriller against Cruz Azul, where a 93rd minute Will Johnson goal gave them let them go level, but it was undone by a 94th minute winner from Christian Jimenez. This game also featured 4 goals from Javier Orozco to add some more spice to this game. What an absolute monster of a game for the second of 6 in this group. Then in September, they would handle Toronto FC easily 4-1 while dispatching Panamanian side Arabe Unido 2-3 on the road. Then they drew the return leg 1-1 against Toronto thanks to goals from Jacob Peterson, yep, that Jacob Peterson, and Javimo. At this point, RSL was on 10 points, as was Cruz Azul, vying for the top spot in the group. TFC and Arabe Unido were on 5 and 3 points respectively, meaning that they had no chance of advancing, and this final game between Cruz Azul and RSL was for seeding purposes. And in front of a 20,000 fan Rio Tinto Stadium, a Paulo Araujo brace and a Colin Warner goal would be enough to hold off Cruz Azul 3-1 and give RSL the top spot in the group, which was a massive achievement for the MLS-based side going up against a quality Liga MX opponent. Across the other MLS sides, as we mentioned, Toronto FC were out, but Seattle also fared pretty poorly. They were out relatively, I think, with like 2 games to go in their group. But Columbus finished second in Group B, and our friends Puerto Rico Islanders, who miraculously made it to Group D, were knocked out in 3rd place, but not before a convincing 4-1 win over Honduran side FAS and a huge 3-2 victory over Liga MX's Toluca. In the final phase of the tournament, the remaining 8 teams would play in a 2-legged knockout bracket to determine the CONCACAF champions. As luck would have it, the winners of Group A would draw the runners-up of Group B, meaning that RSL would face Columbus in the first round. After a thrilling 0-0 draw in front of almost a whole 5,000 people in Columbus, the return leg would decide which club would move on to the next round at Rio Tinto Stadium. And wouldn't you know it, it was a Geiger show. Mark Geiger in charge of the return leg. You know anything is possible. But unfortunately, in this one, there were no scandals or crazy moments, just a resounding 4-1 victory for Real Salt Lake to move on to the semifinals. Here, they would match up against Costa Rican powerhouses Saprissa, who had just beaten Olympia 3-1. In the first leg of this match, Saprissa would travel to the US to take on RSL at Rio Tinto Stadium, and the host would waste no time giving the nearly 17,000 fans in attendance something to celebrate, as Alvaro Saborio got on the board within 10 minutes to give the host the lead. In similar fashion, Fabian Espindola would get one early in the second half to double the lead, a lead which RSL would see through to the end of the match, taking a commanding 2-goal aggregate lead into a very tough Costa Rican environment with one goal in mind: survive and advance to the finals and rep MLS for the first time in the final game since the year 2000. It was a cagey first half in this game that nearly saw RSL go ahead through Kyle Beckerman, whose 1v1 effort was saved brilliantly by the Saprissa keeper to keep them in the match. Saprissa would keep knocking on the door, dragging shots high and wide, but narrowing their accuracy over time, getting closer and closer with each chance. A few more key saves from the Saprissa goalkeeper saw the game head into the break level at 0-0, meaning that 45 minutes of stout defensive play would send RSL to the Champions League final. That mentality was tested as Saprissa got on the board just 1 minute into the second half after a rocket of a long-distance goal from Luis Cordero found the top left corner of Nick Ramondo's goal. One more goal, and the game would be headed to extra time. Tensions were rising until Jaime Olave, of all people, came to the rescue. In the 61st minute, a corner was half cleared by the Saprissa defense and fell to Olave, who sent an acrobatic volley towards the goal and past the Saprissa keeper to level the game at 1 and give RSL a crucial 3-1 aggregate lead, meaning that Saprissa would need 2 goals to get back in the match, or it would be RSL to move on. Then, in the 87th minute, a penalty was awarded to Saprissa after a clear foul in the box. Despite Ramondo's extremely successful track record in these moments, Saprissa did tuck it away, and the pressure was building, needing only one more goal to force extra time. They would push all their numbers forward to get back into it, but the goal would not come, and it was RSL to move on to the Champions League final, sending an MLS club back to the biggest stage for the first time since 2000. In this match, their opponents would be Mexican powerhouse Monterrey, searching for their first ever CCL title after defeating fellow Liga MX side Cruz Azul on an 81st minute penalty to send them to the big game. The finals of the 2010-2011 CCL tournament were also two-legged affairs, one home and one away. The first leg would be played away in Monterrey, while the return leg would be hosted at Rio Tinto Stadium. RSL to this point had lived on the drama of the late goal to get them where they were, and the first leg was no different. After Jesus de Nigris and Nat Borchers exchanged first half goals, Humberto Suazo would convert a penalty in the 62nd minute to give Monterrey the lead, which is not a position any MLS side wanted to be in playing away from home in Mexico. But that mattered not to Javier Morales, who delivered a crucial strike in the 89th minute to draw level and give RSL a crucial second away goal. They would carry this result to the final whistle, knowing that a win or a draw by the score of 0-0 or 1-1 would award them the victory and crown them champions, giving them birth to the 2011 Club World Cup. And playing at Rio Tinto Stadium gave them all the hope in the world. In the final match, it would be RSL with the first big chance. Fabian Espindola and his flowing locks of hair hitting a side volley that is saved very well by the Monterrey goalkeeper. Espindola would then follow that effort up with a brilliant 1v1 opportunity that he would drag just wide of goal. Even further on, Espindola again would have a 1v1 chance after a whiffed clearance by the Monterrey center back. This too he would drag wide of frame. If either of those go in, we may be telling a different story right now. But as luck would have it, Monterrey would make them pay. After some neat interplay at the top of the box, Monterrey was in on Nick Ramondo's goal. He would do well to dive at the feet of the Monterrey attacker and poke the ball away. Unfortunately, this ball would land at the waiting foot of Humberto Suazo, who poked it by the recovering RSL defenders to give Monterrey a 1-0 lead and 3-2 on aggregate, just seconds before the halftime whistle was to go. However, hope was not lost, as one goal would bring the aggregate level again and put RSL in the lead on away goals. And they knew this, and they came out firing in the second half. Many a shot from distance crept over the bar, ultimately not troubling the Monterrey goalkeeper. They would send corners and crosses, and chance after chance would be saved or dribbled just wide of the post. Headers pushed away by spectacular goalkeeper saves, or toe pokes missing the far post by inches. The agony was dreadful for those in attendance on that day, and that agony would live on as the referee blew up at the end of the 90 minutes. RSL could not find a way to tie the game, and they were forced to watch Monterrey celebrate its first ever CCL title on their home pitch. While they were not able to become the first team since 2000 to win CCL from MLS, They were the team that made it the farthest since then. It set a standard that RSL expected from the group from that day forward, and the run in and of itself was one that fans will remember from years on end. From 9 goals thrillers to the heart-stopping actions of last-second equalizers and winners, the run to the 2010-2011 Champions League final was one that fans will look back on fondly for years to come.
Listen, you can't blame Marcel too much here. I mean, Monterrey did not lose a single game in this entire tournament. They
Yep.
won. They went undefeated in all of their group stage games, and then they didn't even drop a single leg across any of the knockouts. Like that's crazy. I mean, and they nearly beat them too, which is
Oh yeah.
crazy.
Yeah,
For an RSL team that like not long ago we were talking about their story of their initial season where they were awful.
oh yeah. And that's really the interesting part, right? Is like if you're gonna lose, you lose to the champs. But to take them that far, I think it definitely took MLS up a notch on the respect ladder, right? Like I remember looking back at some earlier like pre-MLS days where they were putting like USL sides in there or USL A League or whatever. I mean, they were like 7-0 to like Honduran teams. Like we had no respect like just a couple of years before MLS came around. So definitely took us up a level. And it was really, really impressive because, like I said, they battled back from so many times where they were down a goal or even and they needed to win a game. And that fight, they just never quit. And it was really, really interesting to read and learn about that.
I mean, even just looking at this tournament, it's crazy to see how much teams outside of the US and Mexico were so much more competitive than they are now. I mean,
Right.
like Olympia winning their group over Toluca and then Saprissa, who was nearly in the finals. I mean, that a 1 goal difference between them and Real Salt Lake going to the finals of the Champions League is crazy. And now it's like it's inconceivable to think about anybody other than a US or Mexico team in the finals of the Champions League.
Yeah. Well, it's also the different format too, right? One of my favorite parts about doing these sorts of stories is how we have to go back and explain how everything was different. Because I remember doing some CCL research, and it was like every 2 years they changed the format to something different. It was like, all right, what is it now, right? Okay, we're gonna do 4 groups of 4, and the top two advance, and then they play each other. It's like, what are we doing, guys? Like, let's make up our mind.
I know, I know. I mean, listen, it would be wrong of me to count them out. You never know. These teams outside of the US and Mexico could make a comeback and really start to make a name for themselves in the league. But I'll tell you one team that knows a thing or two about a comeback, and that